Hey everyone, welcome to Zooming In. I'm Simone Gao. If you are new here, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell because today we're diving into a major geopolitical incident that could have serious consequences for US-China-Taiwan relations. Let's get right into it. So here's what happened. Last Thursday, February 13th, the US State Department quietly updated its official website, and guess what? They removed the statement, "The United States does not support Taiwan independence." At first glance, this might seem like just a routine update. But trust me, this is big. And as expected, China isn't happy about it.
美国国务院修改美台关系事实清单，在涉台问题上立场严重倒退，严重违反一个中国原则和中美3个联合公报。这是美方顽固坚持以台制华错误政策的又一例证。我们敦促美方立即纠正错误。
Meanwhile, Taiwan, they loved it. Taiwan's Foreign Minister Lin Jialong publicly thanked the U.S., calling the move a reflection of the close partnership between the two sides. As for the U.S. State Department, they are downplaying the whole thing, calling it a routine modification meant to clarify America's unofficial relationship with Taiwan. They insist the U.S. still follows the One China policy and is committed to peace, opposing any unilateral changes to the status quo. But here's the thing. This isn't the first time the U.S. has tweaked its wording on Taiwan. Back in May 2022, under Biden, the State Department removed the references to Taiwan being part of China and the U.S. not supporting Taiwan independence. Then, later, they put those statements back. And now, under Trump, they're gone again. And it's not just this wording shift. The U.S. has been actively increasing its support for Taiwan in other ways. On February 6th, several Republican lawmakers reintroduced bills aimed at strengthening Taiwan's status.
A proposal to officially recognize Taiwan is gaining traction in the U.S. House of Representatives. At least 24 Republicans have endorsed the resolution put forth by Representatives Tom Tiffany and Scott Perry for U.S. President Donald Trump to officially abandon the current U.S. policy toward China and Taiwan. That policy, called the One China policy, has been in place since the 1970s, and it sees the U.S. maintain unofficial relations with Taiwan while also acknowledging but not backing Beijing's claims over the island. Taiwan has had consistent support from Congress over the years, but this year there's renewed hope for a breakthrough. Now, this is not the first time this resolution has been presented to the House. It has been put forth by the 2 Republican representatives every year since 2020. But they are hoping that under a new administration and growing threats of a trade war between the U.S. and China, Taiwan could gain even more support, this time from the president himself.
This move by the U.S. State Department wasn't random, it was strategic, and it's likely aimed at disrupting Xi Jinping's plans for Taiwan. Xi's ideal scenario? Taiwan gives in under extreme pressure, leading to a so-called peaceful unification with China. If that doesn't work, then military force becomes an option, whether that's a blockade or a full-scale amphibious invasion. But here's the catch. Timing is everything. And right now, it's a terrible time for China to start a war. Why? Because the Chinese economy is in serious trouble. Here's what's happening inside China. Slowing growth. The official GDP number for 2024 barely hit 5%, and the IMF predicts it will drop to 4.5% in 2025. Weak consumer demand. People aren't spending, and the housing market is collapsing. Corporate confidence is at rock bottom. No one is investing in China. Foreign capital is leaving fast. In 2024 alone, $168 billion in net foreign investment fled the country. Deflation risk. Prices are falling, but not because of economic strength. It's because demand is too weak. Xi has never been a fan of private businesses, but now he's desperate. He's even calling in business leaders, hoping they can somehow save the economy. There's a theory that when the Chinese economy struggles, Xi might launch a war to distract from domestic problems. But I don't think we're at that point yet. If Xi had completely lost hope, sure, war might be his only option. But right now, he's still trying to fix things. So at this critical moment, the U.S. deletes the Taiwan independence statement, throwing a wrench into Beijing's plans. It forces China to react. If Beijing keeps up with just verbal protest and military drills but doesn't take any real action, then the U.S. has essentially tested China's limits. And guess what? That's exactly what's happening right now. This move isn't just about provoking China, it's also about making sure Taiwan doesn't cave under pressure. The worst case scenario for the U.S. is Taiwan surrendering without a fight. If Taiwan gives in, the U.S. loses access to Taiwan's semiconductor industry, which would be devastating. The world would see China's authoritarian model as victorious over democracy, and the U.S. would have no real excuse to intervene. Because technically it would be Taiwan's own decision. But if Taiwan sticks with the U.S., Washington keeps influence. The U.S. could still support a government in exile, keep Taiwan's chip industry from falling into China's hands, and rally global opposition against Beijing. But what if China does invade? Can the U.S. actually stop them? The harsh reality is it's not clear. According to then Senator J.D. Vance, about a year ago, the U.S. does not have the manufacturing capacity to fight a prolonged war.
We made a mistake, ladies and gentlemen, to offshore all of our important manufacturing technology to China, to Mexico, to other countries. But now what that means is that we don't have the manufacturing capacity here to support America's military goals of the future. Let me highlight this with one very extraordinary statistic. Right now, as we speak, the Russians are firing 20,000 artillery shells a day in Ukraine. Russia has 1/10 the size of the economy of the United States. Do you know how many artillery shells we're sending to Ukraine? How many we're able to manufacture in our country? About 1,000 a day. So an economy that is 10 times smaller than our own is able to manufacture weapons 20 times more than we can. How did we let this happen? But since we let it happen, let's deal with the reality. There are missile systems, there are artillery systems, there are bullets, basic weapons of war that we are sending to Ukraine right now that the real enemy is watching. Because the thing that we need to prevent more than anything is a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. It would be catastrophic for this country. It would decimate our entire economy where the computer chips, so much of those are made in Taiwan. It would throw this country into a Great Depression. And right now, do you know that Joe Biden is not sending weapons to Taiwan, weapons that we promised the Taiwanese, because we're sending those weapons to Ukraine or elsewhere? How does that make any sense? Now, here's the thing that I am often confronted with when people tell me that we can focus on Ukraine and Taiwan at the same time. They say that we have to show Putin that we mean business so that Xi in China will know that we mean business too. But the unfortunate fact is that Putin and Xi, they don't care about our chest thumping. They don't care about what we say. They care about whether we can make enough bullets to fight the war that we may have to fight. That is all that matters. It's time to bring our manufacturing home. It's time to manufacture our weapons in the United States. And it's time to send a message to the world that America is the arsenal of democracy. But we cannot do that unless we get out and stop the focus on Ukraine. We got to focus on China because that's where the real enemy is.
The main point of his remark is that the United States doesn't have the manufacturing capacity to support two wars, or even one war. If the CCP attacks Taiwan, the United States cannot defend it. This is harsh and offensive, but I think that's what he meant. Many people might be asking, If the US can actually defend Taiwan, why do we keep saying we should shift focus away from Ukraine and prioritize Taiwan? Here's the thing. The US has to do this for moral, strategic, and national security reasons. At the core of it, the US must revitalize its manufacturing sector to compete with China, not just for Taiwan, but for long-term global power. And Washington isn't just talking about it, they are already making moves. For example, TSMC, the world's leading chip maker, was invited to set up factories in the US a few years ago. And in the future, don't be surprised if Washington pressures them to relocate all their key people and technology to America. The bottom line, the US needs to establish its own semiconductor industry, whatever it takes. Now let's talk about the bigger picture. Could the US government's recent action push China to move faster on Taiwan? Absolutely. But here's where it gets interesting. That might not be the worst case scenario for the US. If Taiwan stays aligned with America, even if China takes control, several things will happen. Taiwan's government could go into exile, supported by the US. Key industries, including semiconductors, could be relocated to the US. China would face global backlash and sanctions, making it a diplomatic and economic disaster for Beijing. So politically, the US would still come out ahead. But what if Taiwan surrenders under Chinese pressure? Then the opposite happens. The CCP wins politically and strategically. Taiwan wouldn't even think about moving its chip industry to the US. The US would lose a major geopolitical foothold in Asia. So looking at it from Washington's perspective, the US State Department likely removed the "We do not support Taiwan independence" statement to prevent Taiwan from surrendering due to extreme pressure. And moving forward, expect this approach to continue shaping US policy in the Taiwan Strait. Now let's talk strategy. Trump and Biden have very different approaches to handling China. Biden's style, reactive. He avoids escalation, tries to manage crisis, and sticks to traditional diplomacy. Trump's style, the exact opposite. He escalates first, forcing his opponents into a position where they have no choice but to react. In other words, Trump plays offense. His opponents, they are stuck playing defense. And in diplomacy, that gives Trump the upper hand. Here's another key point that some people in the US are making. There is a belief that Taiwan is already an independent country, officially called the Republic of China. And because of that, Taiwan doesn't need to formally declare independence again. If you follow that logic, it means the US doesn't actually need to say it does not support Taiwan independence, because in this view, Taiwan already is independent. This also means that while the US recognizes one China being the People's Republic of China, it can support another country called the Republic of China. So what does that mean for policy? Simple. The US sees the status quo in the Taiwan Strait as something that should always be maintained. But let's be real, Xi Jinping doesn't care about these word games. It doesn't matter how the US interprets Taiwan's status. Xi's goal is crystal clear. He wants to unify Taiwan and make it a province of China, period. And right now, China's response to the US has been pretty mild, mostly just the foreign ministry issuing statements condemning Washington. So far, no drastic moves, but here's the wild card. Trump's stance on Russia and Ukraine. This is making Xi Jinping nervous. Xi was not expecting Trump's approach to Ukraine and Taiwan. Unlike Biden, Trump has openly extended an olive branch to Putin with zero concern for political correctness. And Xi knows exactly what this means. Trump wants to pull Russia away from China. If Trump succeeds, Xi loses a key ally, and that is not good news for China at all. So let's sum this up. The US knows it might not be able to defend Taiwan, but it's still taking steps to prepare for the worst case scenario. If Taiwan aligns more with the US, even if China takes over, America still wins politically. If Taiwan surrenders, China wins everything, both politically and economically. Trump's strategy of escalation forces China into a reactive position, while Biden's approach is more defensive. And finally, Trump's moves to bring Russia closer to the US are a major problem for Xi Jinping. Now the big question, was this a smart move by the US, or is it leading us straight into conflict? I want to hear what you think. Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. If you enjoy this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. I will be back with more insights soon. That's it for today. Thanks for watching and see you next time.